Hello, everyone. Welcome back to yet another political episode. We have groundbreaking news. News that, honestly, I would say, um, we expected, but out of all days, I was expecting this to happen next year, but unfortunately, the time has come. Jimmy Carter has passed away at the age of 100. And this, of course, is tragic. We all know who Jimmy Carter is. He's probably the front page of our memorial series of 2024. He was a good man despite doing really bad things as president. And most most importantly, he left behind a legacy. Today we'll be going over the electoral history and remembrance video of Jimmy Carter. This is the very first video candidate nominee, the very first video where we're doing on a president, a former president. The last time we had a former president die was, I want to believe, in 2019, 2018. It was George H.W. Bush. And Jimmy Carter, he was long ways away. Like in 1976, when he was elected. So let's jump into this video. I'm not. Let's just say surprised. I was expecting this. He was 100, and they were saying Jimmy Carter was they were saying he wanted to make it to election day because he really wanted to vote for the first woman president. Just saying, I don't really know why you would be so proud to do that, but they were saying they were really hoping he makes it because they were knowing he was going downhill really fast. He entered hospice over a year ago, and I'll tell you, he's a very, very healthy guy. He's a fighter. I'll tell you, he lived a long life. There's a reason why he lived a long life. He went to 100 years old. He was very healthy. This guy ran marathons. This guy ran, he was a runner, I want to believe. He also was a biker, And overall, yes, he died in his home city of Plains. And Plains, Georgia is in the African-American community of Sumter County. This is the city he was born in, and it's the city he died in. And it's a community that has solidly stayed with, of course, Jimmy Carter throughout his life. So, I haven't honestly had time to adapt to the news yet. I'm still in shock and surprise. Jimmy Carter passed away, and honestly, I was going this journey with him, although I can't really say that. I was alongside Jimmy Carter in his wheelchair. No, I was paying attention with the news. But as long as, I know you are waiting for it, but let's go over the electoral history of President Jimmy Carter. So, let's see here. Of Jimmy Carter. Okay, yes, he has his own page, and you'll see he first was elected to the Georgia Senate. He entered politics in 1962. That was a long time ago. 1962, he was elected to the said 14th state district in the state Senate, and it looks like he won the Democratic primary. Did he? Or yeah, it didn't say there was a general election though. But anyway, the thing was he ran for governor in 1966. Let's pull up that map. Let's see, 1966 Georgia gubernatorial election. All right, this is what it looked like here. You'll see this is where Jimmy Carter was. You'll see areas in orange is the counties that he won. Orange areas, even won Sumter County, there it is. But really, I don't really like looking at primary results. But just to say where he won, ni- 19 okay, Georgia Democratic gubernatorial election. The Georgia Democratic gubernatorial primary in 1970. You'll see Carter, he was successfully elected in 1970. This was his first statewide race. And boy, this was a very lopsided election compared to the elections we are seeing nowadays, where we see the blue blob, as Steve Kornacki from MSNBC likes to call. You'll see it's just red now. It's the red blob. You'll see DeKalb County, very red, 60% Republican. And part of the reason was that African American voters were not the majority in Atlanta, not the majority in Cobb, not the majority in DeKalb and, of course, Clayton counties. They were all the way over here. You'll see Black Belt, Sumter County, we'll keep a look at that county there, voted for Carter by around a 70% ratio. And forward there, you'll see up here, this county, 60% Republican. Yeah, 59.35%, but then again, are we surprised? Meh, kinda. I mean, you'll see Bo Calloway won the popular vote in 1966, and he lost. He didn't become the governor, because Georgia back then went by electoral vote or delegate count, and Lester Maddox, a Democrat, won the most electoral delegate counts. Yes, you'll also say blame Ellis Arnold. I believe he took away votes from Lester Maddox, but we're focusing here. You'll see won every county. President Carter, now Governor Carter, carried every county except for Atlanta, Fulton County, along with Cobb, DeKalb, Clayton County. This is Athens. This is where Athens is. This is Bibb. This Clark. Yes, Clark County. And up here, I don't know if is it Forsyth County. I don't know where it is, what it's called. But guess what Jimmy Carter decides to do? Jimmy Carter decides not to run for re-election. Why did he decide to do that? Because Jimmy Carter is going to eye up a better prize in 1976. He, in fact, is going to eye up the presidency. That was kind of silly. Why did he decide to do that? Let's go down. Yep. Surely he must be confident in winning if he's going to go run for president. Well, I guess he used his Southern strategy. He knew Southern states would rally around behind him, and that's exactly what happened. You got Georgia. Oh yeah, George Wallace. Of course, George Wallace is going to be the counter factor of the said Southern belt right here. He's going to take away Southern votes against Carter. So he's his opponent in the South. Obviously, Wallace being an anti-establishment Democrat, big populist right-wing Democrat, going against the left-wing base, Carter felt kind of ease of taking him out. But there was numerous uncommitted options. But still, Carter prevailed. And, wait for it, we got the presidential election of 1976. You'll see Jimmy Carter defeating Gerald Ford. Now, Ford, obviously, I'm sure we know how this went in regards to the 1976 presidential election. We remember Gerald Ford. Everyone liked him until he pardoned Nixon, right? And the thing is, Ford's not my favorite. Not to mention, he would be a big rhino today. He's a Rockefeller Republican. Which, of course, he stood for everything that Nelson Rockefeller stood for, Richard Nixon. He was a loyalist to the establishment. And ultimately, a lot of left-wingers didn't like that he supported abortion. Well, why am I saying left-wingers? Southerners. You'll see Alabama, Mississippi. They didn't like that he supported abortion. He was a pro-choice. He was the first pro-abortion president, despite being a Republican, because Roe v. Wade was initiated in 1973. Richard Nixon could have become the first pro-abortion Republican, but actually he said he was against abortion, he was against the concept, and ultimately You could say he's the first pro-life Republican, or pro-life president, in other words. So, yeah, but Ford got the reputation of being the first pro-abortion and advocated for it. Jimmy Carter also supported abortion. No surprise. But then again, I guess a lot of these Southern votes are voting for Carter because Ford decided to step out of line. So, big deal here. You got the best performing state for president, or now president-elect Jimmy Carter, is going to be Georgia. Okay, the state of Georgia, 66.74%. Obviously, Georgia. Oh, D.C. We know D.C.'s always going to be the best performing. So I don't like to count D.C. In case you guys have noticed, I don't like counting D.C. because D.C. from 1964 onward has been the best performing area for Democrats. But best performing state is Georgia. Most bluest, 66.74%. Looking at that state here, you'll see this time Carter won every county. He carried Fulton. He carried Cobb, DeKalb. Cobb and DeKalb counties sound alike, but I'm saying there are two separate counties, DeKalb and Cobb, interestingly enough. These are the two counties that voted for his opponent in that 1970 gubernatorial race, Hal Suit, who already died in 1972. But ultimately, yeah, interestingly enough, you could make the argument that, yeah, Clayton is very red back then, but now Clayton's voting for Carter by 60%. 6 years makes a difference. But yes, Carter carried every county in the state, not to mention this state is the most bluest state, technically, in the U.S. You could make this argument that if it was in the U.S., but then again, 1972, it was a huge sweep. It went from being Republican 75% to Democrat 66%, almost 70%. It was over 50-point swing. And that was because obviously he's the Georgia guy. President Carter, he really campaigned as this old common man guy from the South. And that's really the main basis on why he won these, the South in general. Sure, some abortion reasons could be the reason why, but honestly, it did that, and the pro-life movement was making a big deal there. But really, Carter, the reason why Carter won this area was he was a Southern guy, and honestly, these areas, Ford needed these states in order to win, and there was obviously no way forward. Like, let's see, Jackson Jude, which is a new program I like to use now, going to, like, the past election results. Let's go all the way to 1976. 1976, no. Okay. Yes, you'll see these are the areas with the lined areas are flipped. Carter obviously won his state by a 66% margin. You got, of course, West Virginia, Arkansas, solid blue, Alabama, likely Democrat, South Carolina, and really Mississippi. Why is Mississippi so close? Well, then again, Mississippi has implanted itself into the Republican Party now. Let's take a look at Mississippi in 1972. It voted 78% for President Richard Nixon, although it did vote for Wallace. In 1964, it was the biggest red state with an 87% voting streak for Barry Goldwater. I mean, it was making a dramatic shift, and although Mississippi, a very conservative state, it was not that really comfortable voting for a liberal like Carter. Carter was, unlike Goldwater, Harry F. Byrd, I'm guessing, Mr. Senator Byrd and Strom Thurmond and Wallace, George Wallace of Alabama. Carter was a liberal. And really, the Southerners didn't really necessarily were like, okay, we don't necessarily think this is a good idea. So folks from Mississippi specifically had a hard time figuring out, should we go and vote for the current president, or should we go to the Democrat camp? And it looks like most networks said it was going to be a leaning Republican, but the Atlanta Constitution said, oh, no, it's going to be a big Democrat flip. Although it wasn't a likely Democrat flip, it was a tilting Democrat flip, which ultimately gave Carter the said state. So that pretty much his worst performing state in the said 1976 election. Let's go ahead. 1976. His worst performing state, Utah, the most red state in the country. He did win a couple. This county right here, that county, but yeah, modern Democrat counties today are solid red. Now, President Carter is going to tries to get reelected, but he is very unpopular with the Iranian Revolution of 1978, and with the new regime, the Islamic Republic of Iran, imposing sanctions, resulting to the United States throwing into an energy crisis. And apparently, Jimmy Carter knows he's in trouble. The United States is in an energy crisis, financial panic. And the Republican Party, which had been in a huge decline due to the Watergate scandal, they see opportunity for a comeback. They then again nominate Ronald Reagan for the said presidency. But here's the problem. The Carter administration began to took advantage of media spotlight articles that defamed Ronald Reagan as a far-right racist. And that's how they treat Donald Trump. So has this ever changed? No. The mainstream liberal media attacked Ronald Reagan as too far right, because then again, Ronald Reagan was more right-wing compared to the average Rockefeller Republican. And so it was kind of hard for fellow Republicans to get on board with him. And one fellow Republican was John B. Anderson, the moderate, who was an independent that ran for president originally in the Republican primary, lost to Reagan, but then announced his independent candidacy with Patrick Lucey from Wisconsin as his running mate. Lucey is a Democrat, by the way. So obviously the election was supposed to be very close. As you can clearly see here, Carter was leading Reagan dramatically through like 1980, the beginning of the year. No one exactly knew how close this race was supposed to be. You'll see Reagan started out good, but this is when, in 19 September, is when those negative media articles began to take effect. This obviously led to Carter going up because they bought into the propaganda that Reagan was like Barry Goldwater, wanted to start wars around the country. And so then again, Reagan was sort of a neocon. I'm not going to lie. He was more of a neocon, and he would institute the sixth party system, the neoconservatism in the Republican Party. But then again, Carter, he was getting the country into wars also. So it was kind of hard, and then they keep making up these negative attack ads that, again, Carter ran his campaign on pessimism against Reagan. And as a result, people bought into the pessimism, but eventually Reagan makes a comeback. Carter just decides not to debate Reagan because he thought, I'm going to win by a landslide. Look at me. Looky. And he ends up taking a huge toll when it was just Reagan and Anderson on the stage in the first debate. Carter decided to out-arm that first debate. So without Carter showing his face and speaking and defending his record, and Anderson and Reagan attacking each other along with Carter's record, Carter went down, and it started to get very close. But Carter still led in the polls. But it was finally in June 1980, when Reagan started to finally get back up. But it was always predicted to be a close race. But ultimately, was it a close race? Not necessarily. In the Electoral College, it was a landslide. 489 electoral votes to 49 electoral votes. That was really what the American people were thinking about towards, of course, Reagan. And by the popular vote, Reagan won a 9-point lead. It wasn't a 60-point lead like this map wants us to make it look like. It's just like a psyop. Oh, he was winning, must have winning by 60% or something like that. No, not necessarily. In fact, the South, most counties that Carter carried were in the South. But a lot of the South still remain a part of the Carter coalition. In fact, going over here, you'll see the states of North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, Alabama, Mississippi, Arkansas, Kentucky. These southern states, they were more loyal. They had a hard time getting on board the Reagan train because they associated themselves with the identity politics of Jimmy Carter. Not surprised, Jimmy Carter won his state of Georgia. This time, however, he lost a lot of counties. This time, Clayton County, Gwinnett, Cobb, Douglas, Rockdale. He lost those counties. And ultimately, he won his state by a likely Republican margin, a 55.76% margin against Ronald Reagan. And yes, in 1984, huge improvements. Ronald Reagan carries the state by 60%, which was huge, very good, having Jimmy Carter off that train there, the Carter train and the Carter bus. But yeah, I noticed it's kind of interesting seeing how Carter's home county, like Sumter, is not the biggest, bluest county on the block. Instead, you got this county, these group of counties, actually more bluer. Sumter's not even the bluest in 1976. So this is obviously very interesting. But yes, a huge win for, of course, for Jimmy Carter in Georgia. Not a huge win in Georgia for Jimmy Carter. But obviously, the polls lied, as we knew. They lied this time around in 2024, believing that, the backlash against the Biden administration was just minimal. No, it was a lot. Trump carried every swing state, and Kamala Harris gained nothing. So, very similar to the 1980 election. They thought the backlash against Carter was minimal, because Carter was supposed to carry, it was supposed to be a very close race. Carter was behind Reagan in the final months of the campaign, like by 4 points. No, he was behind him by 9 points. But ultimately, what happens to President Ford, not President Ford, but what happens to Carter after this election? Well, you'll see that this was his last election. He retires. Yeah, and everyone knew it was kind of over it was going to be a difficult run for Carter. He was being challenged by the brother of the president, Ted Kennedy, and a lot of people said, he's just related to the president. That's why he's so liked. That's why he's so admired. Well, that's kind of a little weird then again, they stuck with Jimmy Carter, and they, to this day, Carter allies were saying, he was, he was, of course, related to the president. He's related to the president. Of course they're going to side with him. Really? Then why did Ted Kennedy run? Ted Kennedy, as you know, has that sort of like that RFK Jr. sort of politics when it comes to, he's not that left wing as Jimmy Carter. And obviously, very part of the anti-war coalition. Didn't like what was going on in Iran. Then again, although Jimmy Carter says, I'm not pro-war. But obviously, he ends up prevailing. Carter, as in he, ends up prevailing against Kennedy because he was the incumbent president. But boy, it was the worst performance for an incumbent president trying to get renominated to date, if you will. So this obviously spoke at the popularity of Jimmy Carter, you'll see Jimmy Carter carried the states in red, including the South, while Kennedy carried the states in blue. Very interesting result. But ultimately, the shocking results in the headlines are extreme. This might be the last of our series. Who knows? There's almost everyone's dying lately. But yes, this was a surprising one. We saw it coming. But Jimmy Carter, very healthy man. We can even get some photos. Yeah, he was a runner. There he is. He was even running. Yeah, 43 minutes ago. They're suddenly doing these Jimmy Carter contributions. Yeah, he was a runner. But yeah. Yeah, he was even running when he was older. I'm telling you, the reason why he lived long was he exercised, he got out. He worked I don't like Jimmy Carter. I'm sad that he died. But I'm going to give him credit when credit's due. He worked out. He was healthy. And obviously, even in his old age, you'll see he's so small. And this isn't an edited photo. This is actually real. Why it's still I don't know. Maybe it is edited. I don't know. It's getting so much attention. So how can it be edited? If it people? Yeah, how can Biden be that big than the chair? Interesting. He was also a biker. He biked regularly. He looks like Biden. Biden on a bike. Okay, yeah. Biden tried to take off as Jimmy Carter, and he didn't even make it. Brandon Falls, remember? Yeah, he was a big biker. So obviously, a very big outdoors guy. Runner, biker, and in the long run, this paid, of course, gave him the advantage of living longer. Here's Reagan and Carter on a bike together. Funny. But yes. See, maybe 2 minutes. I want to make this video a half hour because it's a big deal. I don't want to make this video a shorter video because this is a special video. This is the precedent. And I think politicians that have made it so far to the presidency should have the spotlight on them much longer. Let's see. Jimmy Carter as a kid. He looks like that average young kid. This is 100 years ago, guys. Well, I wouldn't say 100 years. 1930s. Here's his photo. Okay, maybe this was 100 years. No, 100 years would be like when he was a little baby. But this is like 1928 or something. This is the 20s for sure. That must be Carter right over here. This has to be Jimmy right here. Academy achievement. James Earl Carter, Sr., with his 3 children. The future President Jimmy on the right. So right here. Interesting. With his sister Ruth and brother Billy. Which one of them is Billy? They look... Is it Ruth, or maybe this is Billy? Then again, he looks fascinating. You got more photos. There he is. Yeah, they grew up on the old farm. He has a shirt off, the average Southern. He grew up as a Southern boy. And I believe, he was in the Army, I want to believe. Was he in the Army? No, he wasn't in the Army, but he paid service. Military service. Yes, he was in the Navy, where he received the rank of lieutenant. He won the American Campaign Medal, World War II Victory Medal. Yep, he served in World War II. China Service Medal, National Defense Service Model. But yes, huge legacy. Like, Jimmy Carter has really good family photos. I mean, this looks so recent, though. This does not look like 1930s. Actually, no. Jimmy Carter's right here. These are his grandkids. Yeah, obviously, they're very recent. But anyway, yes, this was our very special contribution video to the president of the United States, President Jimmy Carter. Not a fan. And obviously, he died a happy man thanks to Joe Biden. He is totally Jimmy Carter ripoff with everything. Like, Joe Biden, he went and gave birth to another Islamic regime, the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, aka Taliban Afghanistan. Similar how Carter gave birth to the Islamic Republic of Iran. Sure, Carter couldn't help it. But then again, he couldn't really control the situation. Are you saying that Carter had the situation under control? No. You can't say that. But this is obviously a sad, I wouldn't say sad day. I wouldn't say it's a special day. It's a bittersweet day. Jimmy Carter has made history of being the president that lived the longest retirement than any other U.S. president. That said, lived the longest life than any other U.S. president. We've had politicians that have lived so long. Strom Thurmond, he died when he was 100. Jimmy Carter, fellow Southerner, also died at 100. Strom Thurmond, he ran, and I know they're going to be mad at me for comparing him to Strom Thurmond, but you know what? There's other people that Carter is very comparable to. Well, which one you wanted me to compare him to? Strom Thurmond or Joe Biden? Yeah, well, I'm just saying, Strom, he was unsuccessful, but he ran for president in 1948. But very special moments that, of course, Jimmy Carter, the last Southerner, because let's be honest, this guy entered politics in 1970. When do we ever have this generation is gone? Like, you go to the gubernatorial races of 1970, everyone that ran in it should be dead, if I'm not mistaken. Big blue wave, by the way, because the Republicans don't know how to win midterms back then. Dale Bumpers, he has been gone since 2016. I mean, I think we can agree. Like Wendell Anderson, he's been gone since he's gone in 2016. Yeah, they died recently, but very old era. These elections, took place way before my parents were born, and my parents are like 50, which obviously these happened over 50 years ago. So I know I made this video purposely long for a reason. This isn't your average memorial video. This obviously took me by surprise. Then again, not surprised. It's not like you had someone like J.D. Vance. Hopefully that doesn't come dying out of the blue. A perfectly young guy. Or a young, like George W. Bush, I would be surprised. Or Barack Obama, I would be surprised. And I'm sure they would make it much louder than how I heard about this news was I was doing my Croatia video. I'm like, stop. I scrapped it and I saw this right here. And that took me by surprise. Normally, if I saw something that is worthy of doing a video, I would just keep going. I'm like, okay, that's interesting. I'll do a video on it. I see it. But this one, I'm like, nope, I have to do it now. Because this is a huge one. We have been waiting. And no one wants to wait for someone to die. But then again, a lot of people are like, okay, let's get this over with and get the grieving process over with. There's people that, especially his loved ones, that just dread it. Grieving. Like, okay, I just rather have him die now so I can... And that's why the assisted suicide thing is just so pathetic and immoral. Not going to go back into that, but that's kind of the logic. But then again, you need to spend as much time with your loved one. Jimmy Carter, I know he was practically dead. He was out of it for most of the day. He would wake up for an hour and go back to bed. He was conscious for 1 hour a day. And he was out of it. Like, obviously, and they were concerned, and rightfully so, but will this guy make it to voting? And obviously, I'm not going to play around with it. He voted early. There's no way old and frail Jimmy Carter, they scrolled him into the voting line on election day when they knew that he could have died any day. And I'm glad they had to celebrate the last Christmas with him. I'm glad his family, they should be in peace. That, of course, Jimmy Carter, he lived a great life. They had one last Christmas, and I'm hoping that one last Christmas was good for them. We know how it feels to lose someone. And I still have people that are my grandmother, 2 grandmothers. I lost one grandfather, and he died he died when I was very young, so I didn't get to experience the company of him. I didn't know him, in other words. But it's going to be hard when my 2 grandmothers die and my grandfather dies. It's going to be hard. And that's the reality we're going to have to accept. Your parents will be next. And your brothers and sisters. Grief is a reality, and that's why they'll say, oh, that's why assisted suicide should be illegal. No. We should try to grieve as little as possible, because grief is so destructive. So I know this video is long. I made it long for a purpose. And to honor this president, he's a part of the opposite party. I don't care. He is the president of the United States. We pay respect to him, and we wish him a peaceful rest as we continue on, leaving that era of history. The one man, the one president from that era of history in the United States gone. Our presidents that wish to tell the days of office range from Bill Clinton to Donald Trump in 2025, which onward, forward. But what do you guys think in regards to this video? Let me know down below. And as always, I'll see you all in the next political episode.